We're starting to see what the president's takeover of policing in Washington, D.C. looks like. National Guard troops arrived today. The Pentagon says about 800 have been activated in support of law enforcement agencies. Today, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt told reporters they've made 23 arrests on charges ranging from fare evasion to homicide, and their role will be reevaluated, she said, in 30 days. She was asked about plans for other cities, which the president named yesterday, and she did not walk it back.
Look, the president is speaking about what he'd like to see take place in other cities around the country. Right now, this administration is focused on making D.C. safe and beautiful again. When the time comes, we'll talk about that.
Among those other cities the president mentioned in passing yesterday, which we should note are all governed by Democratic mayors, is Baltimore. Joining us now is Maryland's Democratic Governor Wes Moore. Governor, it's good to see you. You've said that the president's decision to deploy the National Guard, you called it deeply dangerous. What's your message to citizens who say regardless of crime data or trends, this makes them feel safer?
Well, I'm embarrassed. I'm angered. And frankly, I'm heartbroken for the members of the National Guard who are asked to take on this mission. As someone who has served this country overseas and who has led soldiers in combat, and as someone who is not just the 63rd governor of Maryland, but also the commander-in-chief of the Maryland National Guard, I take very seriously about how, when, and why I deploy members of our National Guard in cases of emergency and in true crises. And I will not authorize the usage of Maryland National Guard forces for missions that I do not deem to be either mission critical or mission aligned. And what we are seeing right now, this distraction, distracting away from the fact that Donald Trump's policies have caused unemployment to go up, have caused people to lose their health care, has caused children to be able to lose their food benefits, and he's now using this as a tool. He's using military personnel, these citizen soldiers, as a cudgel and as a tool to be able to advance his political purposes, because if he really wants to address the issue of violent crime, he just needs to look at what we've done in the state of Maryland over the past 2.5 years, where when I first became the governor in 2022, Baltimore was averaging almost a murder a day. Now, the homicide rate in Baltimore is nearly a 50-year low, and we have watched how the state of Maryland has essentially helped to lead the country in drops in violent crime, in drops in non-fatal shootings, in drops in carjackings. So if he truly wants to understand how to lower crime, he should pay attention to what we're doing in the state of Maryland. And I did it without ever having to once operationalize our National Guard to do municipal policing.
I mean, you said Maryland has reduced its violent crime rate. According to the FBI crime database, Baltimore is still among the top 3 big cities for violent crime, isn't it, along with Memphis and Detroit?
Well, I've been very clear that the #1 priority for our administration is making sure that people can feel safe in their neighborhoods and safe in their communities. And if one person does not feel safe in their neighborhood and their community, that is one too many. But it's the reason that we've done things like making historic investments in local law enforcement, making historic investments in predictive analytics and technologies, and making sure that if someone commits a violent crime, particularly with a handgun, I want them in handcuffs in 24 hours. And making sure we're making commitments and partnership with the mayor, with our county executives, with our local community members, and making sure we're stopping the retaliatory nature of violence. And so while we are very encouraged by the numbers that we've seen how the homicide rate in the state of Maryland is down upwards of 20% since I have been the governor, that the homicide rate in Baltimore City is now reaching 50-year lows. I know we still have work to do, but I also know how to use the right tools for the right mission, and usage of the National Guard is not the right tools to be able to address what we're seeing and the encouraging progress that we are seeing in the city of Baltimore.
The governor of New York sent the National Guard into New York City to the subways, and she says that was successful, that crime actually went down in the subways. There are other groups that say, well, it was already heading on the way down when they were sent in. Would you ever foresee a role for the National Guard in even just making people, feel safer on the streets or in the subways?
I've mobilized the National Guard since I have been the governor, but I also know it's a weight that I take very personally, and it's a weight that I take very seriously, because the people of Maryland know, my background is not as a politician. My background is as a soldier. And I take how we use our citizen soldiers very seriously. And it's important for people to remember that every time you mobilize the National Guard, there's 2 things that become important. One, there is a cost to it. And it's not an unlimited cost. And so you have to understand that when we're utilizing the National Guard for things like municipal policing, that means that's National Guard and resources that are not being used towards things like natural disasters. That's not being towards things like utilization of the National Guard for foreign conflicts. And also the second thing to remember is this: the members of our National Guard, these are citizen soldiers. These are people with other jobs. These are people who have just chosen to take on this additional responsibility and raise their hands to serve the people of their states because the state knows how and when to use them wisely. And so the people of Maryland know that while I will be unafraid to utilize or mobilize members of the National Guard when there's a case of emergency, I will also not use it as just some type of political ploy or some political tool. And they also know that this decision is being made by people who, frankly, have never worn the uniform themselves, that the only uniform they have worn are Brooks Brothers suits. And so there's a lack of seriousness that is going to the decision-making process about what you are doing and how you are impacting the lives of these men and women and their families.
I was looking at crime stats in Washington, D.C., and with carjackings, it seems like actually a lot of young people are involved in it, and often they're armed. I heard you speak recently about, in Maryland, the attention you are paying to the plight of young men in this country and in your state. Can you just speak to that a little bit? It's a little tangential to this issue, but I was struck by some of your focus on the plight of young men these days.
Yeah, we've been very clear from the first days of our administration that in Maryland we are going to put a focus on what is happening with our young men and boys, and I say it not just because of the data. That we are seeing how the suicide rate for young men is 4 times what it is for young girls, that we're watching overdose rates, that we're watching job placement and college completion is the same as it was for young men in 1964. But I also know from a very personal experience that I'm a governor who had handcuffs on my wrist by the time I was 11 years old. That I'm a governor who watched my immigrant single mother have to raise us because my father died in front of me when I was 3. That I was a person who joined the military when I was 17 years old after getting sent away to military school when I was just becoming a teenager. So I understand, and we are going to put a real focus on addressing what is happening with our young men and boys and unearthing their talents. It's the reason we made Maryland the first state in the country that now has a service year option for all of our high school graduates. It's the reason that we have a program called Thrive, an award-winning program that's targeting the young people in our state who are have the highest chance of either being the victim or the perpetrator of gun violence. And I know that over 95% of them are young boys. And so in our state, we are focusing on helping our young men and boys. It is a necessary thing to do. And if you do that, it's not to the exclusion of what's happening to our young girls, but it's making sure that if you want to have strong families and strong communities, you have to be able to uplift the young men and boys who live in them as well.
Governor Wes Moore, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.